Good morning. Good morning. I think we're still, we're just morning. Very good to see you all. As Connor said, it is the three of us. The idea is that we make today a discussion that we're going to have up here, but ideally it would be brilliant if you form part of that discussion too. So if anybody at any point has any query or disagreement with anything that's been said, just stick your hand up. It'd be a pleasure to hear from you. So you can see the title above you. European Regulatory Roundup, with a bit of a focus on UK, Sweden and Italy. It's possible, I suspect, we might find ourselves drawn slightly geographically elsewhere, but we'll see how it develops. And just to repeat what Connor has said, for anybody who's just arrived, I'm delighted that we have here on my left, your right, Maarten Haijer, who is Secretary General for European Gaming and Betting Association. And on my right, your left, Danny Brookes, Head of Compliance at Digital Marketing Experts, ActiveWin Media. I'm David Clifton. For those who don't know me, spent many years as a lawyer in the gambling, licensing and regulatory field for the last 7 years, not running a law firm, but running a consultancy business advising the gambling industry. Let me just sort of give a little bit of an introduction into where we are at the moment, as far as I'm concerned, looking at it from a regulatory perspective. I'm going to go back to a conference at which I was speaking in 2017, about 2.5 years ago. And it was September. It was around about the same time that Sky Betting and Gaming had abruptly cancelled their affiliate program, sending shockwaves through a community, and it may be some of you will remember that very well. What I do remember was that somebody from the audience, an affiliate, and actually I thought quite a pretty established affiliate, posed a question and said that basically he didn't know what the problem was, because all the regulators have to do is to tell him what to do and he'll do it, which to my mind did display perhaps a degree of absence of knowledge. There may well have been very good reason for it, but I think things have certainly moved on since then. One of the first things, as I was involved in advising affiliates, was very much to explain to them exactly what does advertising mean. Certainly under UK legislation, it has a very wide definition indeed. And there's recently been here in the UK an Advertising Standards Authority ruling that was driving home that if you stick up a video on YouTube and you, at the end of it, it's got an operator's name, it doesn't matter whether it was intended to be advertising, it's still going to be regarded as advertising. Just an indication as to how wide that definition goes. From my perspective, I advise affiliates on best practice, on what the regulatory repercussions are, how to address the increasing demands, obviously, from operators as far as audit compliance is concerned. And I'm afraid, but my hair gives this away, I've been doing this since 1983, and we are seeing a very changed industry now. So that's my background and sort of trying to tie it in with affiliates. I'm going to suggest that each of Maarten and Danny just give a potted sketch introduction as to who they are, their relationship with the affiliate side of the industry and the issues that arise. Maarten, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you very much and welcome to this talk. So I'm the CEO of the European Gaming and Betting Association, which is an association based in Brussels consisting of gambling operators. And we represent their interest for European legislation, but also on a national level as well. So pan-European approach we have. So we follow legislation, but we also make sure, or try to make sure, that we show some industry leadership where possible. And clearly advertising is one of the key concerns that has arisen over the past few years. the big issue, I think, with advertising and therefore also with affiliates, because they are part of the ecosystem, is that the advertising has made the sector much more visible, much more tangible for a much larger audience than actually the participants to online gambling are. And so I think that has created a mismatch between what the audiences that we want to reach out to and the perception with the wider audience, so media, public opinion, but also policymakers and politicians. I think that a large part of that visibility, combined with the fact that most people have at best a neutral view of the industry, I would say even less than neutral. So you get very easily, very readily annoyance with the industry, and I think that's one of the key issues that we're seeing now, is that a lot of the measures that are being taken in terms of advertising, marketing, limitations, restrictions, is not based on science, but it's based on the fact that people get annoyed, and the annoyance isn't the visibility of the sector, it's about the marketing and the visibility of a sector that people in general don't really like too much. So that's the whole for the whole advertising discussion that we have today.
Thanks, Maarten. Danny?
Yeah, so I come from a slightly different background. My background's working with operators and working with affiliates to understand a regulation and how we can work to ensure that we do the right thing by the customer and do the right thing by the regulation, but also ensure that we have the right processes and policies and tools in place to carry on the business that we want to do, but to do it in a way that is compliant with the laws. So, you know, it's been a long couple of years. A few years ago when I reached out to affiliates and I spoke about affiliate auditing or media auditing, it was usually blank faces because it's not something that we were used to as an industry. And it was, well, how's this going to affect us? How's this going to change what we do and how we continue to operate in an effective manner? So it's been a change piece for me. So it's been speaking to the regulators of all different persuasions and places, understanding what those laws and regulations are, what they mean in reality for us as, you know, affiliate marketers and operators, and then working out how I can first of all inform the business as to the changes that we need to make and why we need to make them, how we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it in a way that still is going to be good for us. And then it's been about communicating that out to the wider industry. So, you know, as ActiveWins, if we've got a Betfred client, for instance, and we're speaking to our affiliate marketers about, well, when we onboard you, we're going to need this information, and we're going to do this check on the website. It needs to have this sign here. It needs to have the salient terms. All these things that we talk about all the time. How we make that process easy and how we can inform the affiliate. So I've got a compliance team, and you know, we'll have that communication, and then it's about, well, we've looked at the site, it's not quite right, it's not no, and we're not going to move forward with this, or yes, this is right. It's how can we help you, how can we inform you of the changes that we recommend that you make, and what we've seen in the past other people do that's worked well, so we can carry on with conversion, but just make sure that we're doing things right. And then as a process then, how can we make sure if things change or the website needs updated, that we're checking that, and we use technology to do that. I then again inform you, so we can get the changes made and get that fixed up. So that's kind of what I do day to day.
No, that's interesting. Thank you. I mean, one of the things that I think possibly still is not appreciated by some is that, in fact, nothing really from a regulatory position changed that much 3-4 years ago. It's always been the case that licensed gambling operators are held responsible for the actions that are taken by their affiliates. And that, certainly here in the UK, is one of the basic reasons why affiliates, you lucky things, don't need to get licensed. Because whatever an affiliate does, it's ultimately the gambling operator who's going to be held liable if they are stepping over the line. And those lines, there are more of those lines. That perhaps has changed a bit more because of developments over here, Competition and Markets Authority looking into consumer protection issues over the last 2-3 years. That's made it even more of a tricky landscape. And the Gambling Commission has effectively given itself even greater powers, so that if there are advertising failings, they are now able to take more enforcement powers against the license holder themselves. And of course, where this is all leading, here in the UK, some of you may know this anyway, is that there is going to be a review of the entire gambling legislation in the UK. And we know that nothing is off the table, and we know that gambling advertising is coming absolutely under the microscope. So we're going into a period of change. We don't know quite what is coming next. It has to be said that up to now the industry, rightly or wrongly, has been on the back foot. Let's just hope, in all respects, and that includes in relation to gambling advertising, that the industry here is going to unite and present a united, and this will include affiliates playing a part in that debate, a united argument to government that this is a responsible industry, and I'm including affiliates and operators in one fell swoop here, and that there is still a degree of self-regulation that can be allowed going ahead. Now that's my sort of thumbnail sketch where we stand here in the UK. Danny, immediately for you to react to what I've said, I mean, I think I saw some nodding to my right, but what can the affiliate industry do in order to support that sort of argument?
I don't think, a lot of the time I get the feeling that we're hit with a big surprise, and we're not expecting a change that comes into force. And within Britain, at least, I don't always think that that's the case. Usually there's some kind of pre-warning. There's some, whether that's a consultation by the Gambling Commission on a specific thing, such as white labels or credit card bans or demo play on affiliate website. And usually before we get to that point, that's precipitated by an adverse media story or many adverse media stories. So I think by being aware of our environment and being aware of the general feeling within the population, we can almost preempt what might come in the future. And that allows us to get ahead of the curve. So we've been very successful in doing that because what we've done is we've implemented the change before it's come into place. And yes, there's some risk in doing that. What if it doesn't happen? But usually you can see it happening. So by being aware and by having proper change management within your business, you can successfully kind of navigate the compliance waves as and before they hit and actually do something better than the competitor. So to do that, there's no point someone like myself coming up to someone in a business and saying, look, these changes are being made, we need to do something about it, if no one's going to implement those changes or listen to that advice. I think what's really important is excellent change management within a business, so that you can actually say, yes, actually, this is the issue, this is what might happen, let's think about, brainstorm how we can actually effectively manage this change and make it a viable proposition for the business moving forward. So we can see that a good one is white labels. White label businesses are very, very strong, very, very, very good for the industry. But we know that there's going to be increased amounts of management that an operator needs to do over that. So that might be proper source of funds, ensuring that the CS functions or CRM functions are in-house, for example. So how can we allow an area of the industry which works really, really well for us continue to work well for us, and to think about those problems before they happen will affect the change that you ultimately need within your business. And that's probably one of the major pieces of advice that I personally can give you, on that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. It needs the affiliate industry to understand all aspects of regulation that are having bearing ultimately as far as the ultimate customer is concerned, to get really into it in much greater depth possibly than has been the case before. But we've got up here on the title, we've got Sweden and Italy as well. Maarten, from a European angle, what can you tell us, Sweden and Italy?
Yeah, I mean, Sweden and Italy, I think there's a distinction between the UK and many of the other countries in Europe. Can't say EU member states anymore. But and it's more mature both in terms of the market, but also in terms of regulation and the understanding of the regulator of the market. And in Sweden and in Italy are two examples of where politicians are making a decision, or probably going to take a decision in Sweden about advertising, and they don't really know or are aware what is the ecosystem behind it. So the advertising ban in Italy is just, I don't like to see ads on TV, I prohibit TV. And the politician has no idea what's behind this world. So there's a different discussion going. And even there's not really a discussion ongoing, because the problem actually both in Italy and in Sweden is that the regulators have really closed the curtain. Extremely difficult to get even meetings with the gambling authority to talk about the ban, the interpretation of the ban, either in Italy or propose new legislation in Sweden. So in that sense, you're relatively lucky here in the UK, because at least you can have a discussion. At least the affiliate sector as such is organized or is getting organized. And that's a very different situation in most of the other countries in Europe.
And I think it's essential that the affiliate industry, and we were hearing about the association in the previous session, that it has got a voice, and it needs to get that voice across. Otherwise, your concerns for what you're doing, they're not going to be heard in quite the same way. So it's not for me. It makes no difference to me whether you join an association or not. But a united voice is going to be much stronger than single voices, or indeed none at all. Maarten, just to pick up on what you've just said about achieving a better understanding. I mean, one of the problems in Sweden has been sort of trying to understand what moderate advertising means, hasn't it? Because that, as I understand it at least, was really the extent of the direction as to which those advertising should go. But I know there's been a bit of clarity recently on that. Do you want to comment on that? Is that something you can?
Not in detail, but yeah, I think the whole advertising discussion is happening not just in Sweden but everywhere. It's really about visibility and annoyance. It's the two things combined. So moderate advertising, my guess is that a politician would mean not too much advertising concentrated at the same time. I think you can advertise your socks off during the night, but please not around a football game, because that's when the politician is watching TV as well. I mean, that's a bit unfriendly way of saying it, but in a way, I think it is part of the motivation is this. And the definition of moderate is obviously extremely difficult to give.
Yeah, what the court said in Sweden, which was, I think, November, they're saying any pop-up ads that automatically take up an entire browser window, regardless of content, are likely to be regarded as intrusive and encourage excessive gambling. So that's brought within the not moderate advertising. Use of reference to skill tactics, indicating you can influence the results of a wager. That is also falling foul. Imply from claims about quick payments, ease of use, a player can quickly win large amounts of money. No. Aim directly at consumers by accentuating fast betting and quick payouts, and the bet now type adverts that have fallen foul here in the UK as well. So all of those are ruled out effectively now in Sweden. And those who applauded that judgment are saying, right, well, everybody knows. Well, they've got a bit more of a clue, possibly. How do you feel? Let's just sort of look at UK. I mean, you can extend to Sweden if you wish. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, Danny, how easy is it generally to understand what the regulatory requirements are? I mean, we've got the advertising codes in the UK. If you're doing anything else elsewhere in Europe, how difficult is it to get to grips from your perspective?
Not that difficult for me. I mean, the ASA, the cap code's pretty simple. It says exactly what you can do, you can't do. The CMA were very clear as well with regards to what they're happy with and not happy with. I was mentioning before about the demo play stuff and how we can, what we can do, what we can't do on affiliate sites. With regards to other markets, I take a risk-based approach. It's usually what regulators would want. So we can see, we talk about what I would call normal stuff. Well, the stuff that we talked about there wasn't anything that's not outrageous. Gambling should be a choice. It's an opportunity for someone to take up a leisure activity in a way that's fun and enjoyable for them. There shouldn't be pressure to gamble, and we don't need to do that if we work on our branding in the right way and we can give an effective message with a good bonus offer that's attractive to them. We don't need to say bet now and get the offer within 25 minutes, or do a full page spread with flashing lights, because the offer itself and the branding and and what you present as a product is what speaks to the customer. So the way I tend to do it is if I'll look at a code and regulation's not for everybody. It's not a fun or necessarily enjoyable thing to read to go through. But the first thing that I like to do is to kind of to zeitgeist it, just to kind of break it down into sections, to understand what the requirements are and to see how that affects us. So, you very eloquently kind of brought together there what was said in Sweden. That makes it clear to me then of how I need to act and what I need to inform the affiliate managers who work for us. So what you mentioned earlier as well a little bit about the industry as a whole getting together and kind of making, communicating together, and because we get a hard time, right? Like the gambling industry gets a really hard time in the press. Affiliate marketing gets beaten up in the press all the time, what we do, but ultimately we're all trying to do a good job. So, for instance, in the UK, we have consultancies with the Gambling Commission all the time, whereby they ask for people's opinions. But even as separate businesses or as a group, to be able to say, yes, this works for us, this is our expertise, and we don't agree with what you're saying here or this particular point, but we recommend you do it this way, and this could work for the industry, is a very powerful thing to do. So the louder the voice and the stronger we can speak about things, the easier it'll get for us. A, we won't be taken by surprise, and B, we'll actually be able to influence the decisions that are being made at a policy level before they come into play and affect us.
Yeah, and thanks for that. Maarten, did you want to add?
Well, I think the area of the quality of the ads, so I talk about moderation, not just in volume, but also in the message that you want to get across. I think that's an area where the industry can do more than we do now. I think what you see also from what you just read out is that probably also policymakers find that if you put as an operator, an affiliate, you put pressure on the consumer to gamble and gamble now, I think that's where this sense of urgency is what probably something is what advertisers need to look more at and maybe moderate more. I would agree. Of course, it's a fine line because you make advertising for people to do what you propose them to do, and that's how you make money. So that's fair enough. And of course, you don't want to ask them to do it in 2 days, but you want to do now. But I think it's a very fine line in finding the right wording, imagery. But if people deem it to be too much putting pressure, too much creating a sense of urgency, I think that's one of the areas where the industry probably can do better than we do now.
And I think this, I don't want to over-dramatize this, but I think this is a bit of a crisis time for the gambling industry here in the UK at the moment. And to all intents and purposes, those of you who are affiliates here, you are part of that industry. And without wanting to bang on too long about it, there have been a whole series of events, and advertising has been part of it here in the UK, that have riled the public, a bit too much advertising. Press have caught on to that. Sensationalist stories, some of them vaguely accurate, some absolutely not accurate. But nevertheless, thumbs down to the gambling industry and anybody involved with it. Politicians onto it. Here we are. We've got a review of the gambling industry, and I think that on the basis that you are carrying out an advertising function for and on behalf of gambling operators, you are part of that industry, and the weakest link in that industry is what will be noticed. And can I just ask, and I don't want to embarrass anybody here, so I'll put the question this way. Those of you sitting here who are affiliates, have you realized, are you appreciating, have you been changing practices in order to be much more in line with guidelines and finding out more about guidelines, whether you wanted to or not? Has there been quite a change over the last 2-3 years? If you think yes, from your perspective, just lift a hand. I'm not going to ask anybody any questions. And thank you for that, which is good to see. And it's got to be a curve continuing in that upward direction. For those that you're dealing with, Danny, and giving in sort of advice to, is that something that you're picking up on too?
Yeah, it's getting easier. We'd write to an affiliate marketer who was potentially advertising in a non-compliant way even 12 to 18 months ago, and we wouldn't get a response. And it's only when they realised that actually we will close, your traffic down and stop working with you. And people started to kind of sit up there and take some notice of what we were saying and why we were saying it. What we've started to notice recently is a more collaborative approach. I think it's partly because the affiliate industry understand that operators need to make these changes, and as you know, everyone's under pressure, so we're going to do something about it. And secondly, I think people are also aware now a lot more about the industry in general and what people are thinking within the industry and how we can kind of maintain our success, because we've been very successful, right? We've had a really, really good go at it since the legislation changed in the UK, recently, 10 years ago, whenever it was. We're doing all right, and we want to be able to continue that here and in other territories. And like it or not, other territories and other regulators look at what the Gambling Commission do here. We're seen as a kind of like a model to follow. And what we've noticed within wider society, and is a societal issue, is that the kind of trust within the industry in general has dropped dramatically. So public opinion of what we do is down in the ditches, and that should be worrying to us, and we need to kind of have like a combined effort, and it's not just affiliates, there's operators as well, to kind of say, look, everybody, we are a leisure activity, it's a fun thing to do, enjoy it, do so responsibly, and I know that message is going out. And actually, these are the things that we're doing to get ahead of the curve. And I've said ahead of the curve a couple of times now. But really, as technology companies, as marketing companies, as creative people, we shouldn't be waiting on the regulators to tell us what we need to do. We should be coming up with really, really cool and interesting tools to be able to kind of protect those customers whilst ensuring that we're getting good LTVs from the customers over time. And we can do that with lots of technology at the moment, and I think there's a really good opportunity to develop that further within the industry and externally of the industry as well into other regulated markets. I'm surprised that we're not doing more of that actually, and actually taking this as an opportunity to look at how we can kind of improve things for the customer, and also how we can develop new technology.
Maarten?
I fully agree. Daniel put it perfectly. I think we're part of society, and people have an opinion about the industry. And as I said before, in general, it's not very positive. And society is putting pressure on the industry. And I think it doesn't make sense for us to deny it, or to think it's will blow over, or it's irrelevant. It's very relevant. I think we should not forget that most people enjoy gambling because it's just fun, 95%. So we're not like tobacco. But at the same time, some of the arguments that you hear why there should be advertising bans or why there should be less gambling in general are precisely the same arguments as are used against the tobacco industry. And for us, the challenge is not to deny that, but I think for us is to explain, and also to do better, frankly speaking, to do better. And that's, I think, the challenge that we have as an industry. And I think if we don't do it, we'll always be on the back foot and running after the changes rather than trying to influence it.
And I think another factor to be taken into account, possibly some people might feel it was a lot of politics involved in the Italian decision, but nevertheless it was a factor there. It was most certainly a factor here, the amount of TV advertising, and that's what led to the UK's whistle-to-whistle ban. Now that may not affect affiliates in quite the same way, where the focus, certainly here in the UK, from the Advertising Standards Agency is very much more on online. There was some financial analysis carried out last year. Gambling operators spending £1.2 billion marketing online, 5 times more than on television ads. And so if it's the television ads that have really attracted the public and political disapproval, with the focus turning to online, which is where you guys, I suspect, mostly are practicing your business. Without wanting to sound pessimistic, I mean, it's not a pretty picture. That's where the focus is going to be, isn't it, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, I can almost guarantee that there's going to be more and more of a magnifying glass on our industry and online and our affiliate sites, and the message we're giving. We can talk about, we all do top 10 affiliates, and I put things up like that, but also when we're looking at like the copy and the information about the games that we're providing and wording, especially these days now where you can essentially take those wordings, put it through a model and actually be able to analyze it without someone having to go through eye to eye and look for every single page. You can really look at that now and really get that analysis. So we need to understand how we do that, and also in terms of our SEO, the messaging that we're doing, and also keywords, what we're bidding on and why we're bidding on it. These are all really important things to start to look at. We just need to be aware of it. I don't think anybody wants to see, well, that's not true. I think some people do want to see a contracted marketplace. I think they do want to see gambling taking a backseat, gambling and advertising stopped. That's the reality that we're living in. It's just how we can make sure that we make that as difficult as possible, because it's always, and I think you touched on it before, it's the newspaper stories won't run on how many good sites there are and how much effective and brilliant marketing that accurately displays, what the customer can get and why they can get it. They're not going to concentrate on that. They concentrate on the stuff that doesn't work, on that one affiliate story that's kind of saying, come and make £10 million, you're going to make a fortune gambling, you can't lose on this slot machine. That's what's attractive. And then it's that one customer who's gone through that particular link, goes on the operator, gambles too much money, doesn't get closed down, and all of a sudden, bang, you have a big story in the press. We need to make sure, as much as possible, that we're not falling into that trap, because it is a trap, and ultimately people are looking for it, because it's an easy story, right? If you've got a quiet news day and you can run a story about a dodgy affiliate marketer in quotes, or a dodgy operator in quotes, people read it, people like it gets people's emotions up. They can see this poor person that's lost the house or whatever. And some people, and I'm not saying that this doesn't happen, people do lose their houses, we need to be very careful, but it's also sensationalized a lot of the time in the press. So we just need to be really aware of that, and we really need to be focused on it. And I don't have all the solutions. For me, it's just understanding the regulations, understanding what's going to happen in the future, and starting to kind of embrace that change management, as I said, and technology moving forward. And we can all think about how we're going to do that individually, but everybody does need to do that for the gain of everybody, and to make sure that we continue to be successful and make the kind of returns that we want to see.
Yeah, I mean, from a PR perspective, about a couple of years ago, and some of you may know about this, about an affiliate publishing an advertorial which basically told a story about some guy who was depressed, his wife was suffering from cancer. Suddenly he sees advert for online casinos, 3 of them. It was all the same ad that was going out. And so he's going to play that because he's going to win huge sums of money. It's going to make his wife better. And isn't that brilliant? Well, the answer is no. It was far from brilliant. I've reminded people now, but I mean, that story, the damage that did to the gambling industry, to you as the gambling industry, I'm going to bring you, we're all within it together, all of us who are involved in whatever way. So other things that raise question marks. Now, some of you may know about this. Others, we're here at ICE, we live in a bit of a bubble in these few days that we're here. An urgent request by Mr. Green. Do people know about this? Happened in the last couple of days. I'm going to read you what their urgent request says to all of their affiliates. Due to recent changes in compliance, UK affiliates must pause all Mr. Green UK casino and live casino promotions for the UK immediately. UK affiliates must remove all materials promoting these products in the UK, such as banners, text links, pop-ups, social posts and any other marketing materials for the Mr. UK Green, for the UK. Mr. Green UK Sports are still available to promote. And then they say what they've done. So there is some, I'm not going to speculate, but that didn't happen just because they woke up in the morning and thought they'd put that request out. So this is a fast-changing minefield at the moment. Maarten, one of the questions that's or one of the points that's put forward against advertising bans is that the consequence of an advertising ban is that customers are going to be driven to offshore sites, and that it will be affiliates playing their part in that. What comment have you got on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you take a step back at the reason why, earlier in the UK, but other countries in Europe later, why the whole gambling market online, I'm speaking for online, market has been regulated, is because they accepted that people play online gambling. It won't go away. And then it's better to create, first of all, to take the tax revenue, and also to create a safe environment for people where they can play online gambling, protected by consumer laws, money laundering laws, what have you. So the whole idea of this surge of regulation in Europe over the past 10, 15 years is to create a safe environment and get tax return. And that's the two main objectives of regulating the market. I mean, online you have no visibility if you cannot advertise. I mean, if you don't have any offline visibility in terms of shops or people's consciousness, then online you have no visibility. And for a customer person that wants to gamble online, let's say in the Netherlands soon, and he needs to know where he can gamble, he needs to have the information of which website is regulated. As simple as that. And if you can't advertise for your website, how is that person going to know that he has to play or can play with either Betsson, Mr. Green, GVC, Bet365, Kindred? I mean, it won't be published in some kind of a newspaper. People don't read newspapers anymore anyway. So that's the whole argument of channeling. If you don't allow a certain level of advertising, people will not be aware where they can play safely online. The problem with that argument only is that if you have an advertising ban, you only see the effect of that ban much later, because, of course, this is the theory, but the empirical data will follow later. And so that's, I think, also a bit part of the problem with the Italian advertising ban, is that you can have a ban tomorrow, but the proper effect you only see maybe in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, by which it's fallen off the political agenda already. And as soon as you have a ban, it's extremely difficult politically to get it de-banned again. So I think that's the problem that we face as an industry. Once a decision like that has been taken, it'd be extremely difficult to get it reversed.
And I think it's October, isn't it? I think this year that in Sweden a decision is going to be made as to how restrictive the new advertising regulations will be.
I think it will be. I think it will be October. I'm not quite sure, but I think this year the decision will be taken. And for sure there will be restrictions, that's absolutely sure. I mean, obviously you don't want to speculate on how restrictive it will be. There I think there's also a distinction to be made actually between a mature market like the UK, where you might have a slightly better argument as a whistle-to-whistle ban, rather to a newly regulated market in Sweden, where you need to find the new customers, you need to guide people to the regulated environment. And if you have a restrictive policy in Sweden, I think the effects will be even worse than would be in the UK, because it's such an immature market still.
And I think from your perspective within the affiliate sector, I think it's a very good idea for you to also keep in touch with what is happening that is going to be affecting this entire question. Here in the UK, there is a working party that has been set up in order to explore how ad technology can be used. And the idea to minimize the risk of exposure of gambling advertising to children and those who've self-excluded from gambling, and targeting ads away from them. So these are important developments, and I think it's very important that, if you don't mind me saying, that you as a sector are aware of what's going on, in these respects. Anything with your knowledge of technology that you can bring to the party would be hugely welcome too. Because putting it bluntly, I mean, if we're going to find that we have a gambling ban here in the UK, there's one in Sweden, everybody's going to suffer, particularly affiliates too. Licensing of affiliates. If we've got those of you who are affiliates sitting here, can you please put up your hand if you would be happy to be licensed? We have one. We have one. We have two. We have two. I'm assuming the rest of you wouldn't be. In the UK, it's unlikely because the Gambling Commission can hold the operator responsible. The Information Commissioner's Office can hold the operator responsible in data protection terms as well. Do you see a ban coming anywhere? If we see matters develop as they are currently, Maarten, can you see that there would be any licensing requirement for affiliates in Europe?
It's difficult to see, but in the previous panel, I think, if I'm not mistaken, but maybe I misunderstood Clive, but I think Clive Hawkswood from the new association actually said he expected there to be licensing of affiliates in the UK, but maybe I'm wrong, but I think he said that.
I'd be surprised.
Huh?
I'd be surprised.
Well,
I would disagree.
I wouldn't know,
Clive.
but I think that was his statement. But what we see happen a lot is that if some development is in one member state, other countries in Europe copy the idea as well. I mean, the credit card ban in the UK is a good example. We saw this pop up and we just said, let's count the days till another country says, let's have a credit card ban as well. And sure enough, within a few days, Ireland thought it would be a good idea as well. And so if licensing would start somewhere, I think it's something that might get traction elsewhere too.
Any thoughts on that? I mean, if one thinks what the consequences are with the licensing fees, all of the responsibilities, the massive fines that can come with it, would you be happy to get licensed?
Ideally not, but we've been looking at the US market and different states within the US, and there is an element of licensing. It's you do it through your house casino, and they speak to the regulator. It's different depending on the state. And if you want to do more of a platform, it's full regulation there. You have to go through that and pay the costs. And elements are good, elements aren't. So there's an idea that, well, if you're bringing traffic, the regulator should know who you are. They shouldn't be able to kind of do due diligence on the kind of shareholders or UBOs within the business and get an understanding of who it is that's promoting that particular traffic. And have like an overview of which vendors are servicing a specific regulated industry. Am I for it within the UK, within Great Britain? For the ActiveWins, no. I prefer not to do it from an operational point of view. However, I'm slightly. There is a part of me that is drawn towards it. You can weed out a lot of the cowboys within our industry, really, really quickly. If you're a strong affiliate marketer, you're going to be able to take a good hold of, the traffic in the industry. It might potentially reduce competition, which is something that I'm not such a big fan of. CPAs might go up, rev shares might go up because you're going to get, as we've seen already a little bit, larger affiliate marketing companies taking a hold of the industry and buying up. So I know I'm not really giving you a straight answer here because I'm not sure I've completely decided, but we are seeing the model come into effect across the pond in the USA to some degree. So potentially we might see something of that in the future. And it's to be seen through consultation, how that would be implemented before I'd make my final decision on whether I'd support it or not.
No, thanks for that. Well, we're coming towards pretty well now the end of our allotted time. What it does, I think, say up there, no, it doesn't, but it'll say it in your program. How can you future-proof your business against unforeseen or sudden change? Well, I don't know that we've given you the answers on that, but hopefully what we've managed to do is give a little pointer into the future and at least some things to think very carefully about. The industry, and again I say we are all part of this industry, is facing big challenges throughout Europe, but with challenges come opportunities. And so unless anyone's got any question, if we've allowed a second or two for a question. Anybody got a question for anyone up here? In which case, thank you very much for your attention, and perhaps you would be kind enough to say thank you to Maarten and Danny for their input. Thank you.